Good evening, Shalom, to all our friends and supporters out there. Uh, Tonight, we're going to be discussing the so-called Board of Peace set up by President Donald Trump for Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveled to Washington to meet with President Donald Trump, and he also met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and he signed on to this Board of Peace. Now, Hamas has been very clear that they are not going to disarm. They're not going to disarm. Israelis are well aware of this. This has been widely reported in the Israeli media. And in fact, as recent as today on I-24 News, they had a segment, or segments actually, where they discussed it. And when they said, that Israel cannot accept a situation where Hamas is not disarmed, and therefore there will not be any movement towards stage 2 of this peace proposal for Gaza, and that Israel ultimately is going to have to take the law into their hands and disarm Hamas. The plans that Jared Kushner are putting forward are unbelievable for Gaza, but that's sticking point. And is that going to be reality, that no, Hamas can't have any role in the future of Gaza? I'm joined with Meir Jolovitz, Mideast analyst, expert on the situation. Meir, a lot is going on. Every hour, it seems like something new is coming up. What do you make of this Board of Peace, the direction it's going in? How do you read it?
Okay. First of all, good to be with you as always.
Good.
I want to come back to something that we've mentioned on at least one of our previous broadcasts that we did together. And I placed a certain measure of blame on Israel, or more specifically on its Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, when I complained at the time that in order to try and get the world to dislike Hamas more than it ostensibly did, what he did is he played a card which I think had backfired. It certainly has backfired. Quite a number of months ago, there was a decision made by the Netanyahu government that they would agree that the victims in Gaza were not only the Jews who had fallen trying to defend Israel against Hamas, but the Palestinians themselves. Now, this was a position that had been taken by the Biden and the Biden government and the Antony Blinken foreign policy, as I used to describe it, which basically said that the Palestinians were the victims of Hamas no less than the Jews, which was an absolute fraud, a fallacy of reality, which I will cite in a minute. And what happened is Bibi thought, okay, we need to somehow demonize Hamas, so we will go along with that narrative that says that the Palestinians themselves were victims, innocent civilians who also were victimized by Hamas. The position, I wrote an op-ed at the time, and I said this is a terrible mistake, because one day, if Hamas was ever defeated, if Hamas was ever neutralized, Israel no longer has a case to make that Gaza shouldn't be left in the hands of the Palestinians, that there should not be any pathway to a Palestinian state. After all, Israel has agreed with the Western world, with the European Union, with the United States, that the victims were Palestinians themselves. Instead, what Israel should have highlighted, something which I've done in print, which we've talked about in our broadcast before, is the fact that the Palestinians were not innocent at all. And I'm going to look down, I'm just going to read a couple of important points. And this is nothing new. This is nothing that Bibi himself didn't understand or doesn't understand. And yet Israel has done a terrible job in trying to convey or articulate the truth. The most reputable survey outfit in the Middle East that represents the Palestinians is the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research. It's a nonprofit based in Ramallah, and I had cited them on several occasions in the past, wrote about them, but others have as well. And if I can just throw in a couple of numbers which are quite relevant to where we are today, during the first 2.5 months of the war in Gaza, they came out with surveys, This is Palestinians surveying Palestinians. And they admitted that 71% and later 87% of the Palestinian Arabs living in Gaza actually supported the atrocities of October 7th. The question that was asked in the survey was, how do they feel about, and specifically October 7th? And it didn't seem to be of concern to people who thought that the Palestinians were somehow innocent. Well, it's interesting. I went back and I did some research, and I found six additional surveys which were conducted by this Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research. Again, a pro-Palestinian group an organization based in Ramallah. And as I read from their own site, dedicated to promoting objective and nonpartisan research and analysis, encouraging a better understanding of Palestinian domestic and international affairs. Well, here's the interesting thing, that there were 6 consecutive polls which appeared, which they published, which demonstrated tremendous support in Gaza for Hamas. I'm going to cite one. I'm going to cite one. In November of 2025, talking about 3 months ago, which is 2 years after October 7th, 80% of the Palestinians living in Gaza who were surveyed said that they want ousted as a spokesperson for the Palestinian cause the PA leader Mahmoud Abbas. And of those 80% who said that they did not want him, 77% said that they wanted Hamas to be in charge. And the question is asked is, has Israel made a strong case to let the Kushners, the Witkoffs, and the Trumps understand that this is who they really are? That the reconstruction of Gaza, which is laughable in and of itself, is supposed to somehow serve the very people who post-October 7th, who celebrated October 7th, all of a sudden are telling us that they want Hamas in power. So allow me to do 2 things very quickly.
Yep.
Yoram Ettinger, Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, a very smart man, once wrote something. It was a part of his thing, which was titled Second Thought on U.S.-Israeli Initiatives. And I just want to read one long sentence, but it basically tells us what the problem is on the American side. This is the problem with Kushner, with Witkoff, and tragically with President Trump, who, as we've identified, is the best president the Jews have ever known. And the best president the Jews have ever known is naive and doesn't get it right. We're in trouble. Here's what Ettinger wrote: erroneous assumptions, and I read this. I want people to keep in mind the concept of American foreign policy and how it's structured. Okay, so here it goes. Erroneous assumptions produce erroneous policies, as has been the case of all U.S. initiatives towards the Palestinian issue, which has been erroneously perceived by the U.S. foreign policy establishment to be the root cause of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Translated very simply, we're no longer talking about an Arab-Israeli conflict and have not been for a while. Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu among them, is guilty of having us allow them, the Western world, to define this conflict as Israeli-Palestinian. And the moment that we allowed them to describe it as Israeli-Palestinian, we lost. We're not going to win that war of words. We're not going to win that war of ideas. This is not just an Arab war against Israel or the Muslim war against the Jews. Okay? For them, it's something else. It's an Israeli war against the Palestinians. And it's not an argument we're going to win. One last word. When it comes to the Board of Peace, this fraudulent Board of Peace, there were 59 nations which had been invited to be part of it. 29 had said that they would agree to it. Others said they needed to think. And we, again, spoke about this. I won't go into great detail. It included 8 Muslim countries. But of the 59 countries that were invited to be part of it, only one, didn't believe or doesn't believe in a 2-state solution. One of the 59. And what's the one? It happens to be Israel. Every other nation, certainly all the Muslim states on that thing, believe in a 2-state solution, which means, in essence, rewarding the very murderers of Hamas by giving him a state. This palatial, the diagrams that I saw from the architects that Jared Kushner presented on January 22nd, Davos, Switzerland, showing Singapore on steroids with these Babylonian gardens and these 30 skyscrapers overlooking the ocean, everything else. It's nonsense. But the thing that's most troubling, to come back to it, is the fact that we've allowed nations which don't recognize Israel's right to exist, and many of them, to be on this board of peace. That we have invited nations, every one of them, that believes ultimately in a two-state solution, or two-state delusion, as we often call it. We've allowed that. And all of a sudden, 4 or 5 days ago, it was announced that even though Israel objected to having any Turkish or Qatari troops on the ground in Gaza, when Israel is told to leave, and notice the language, is told to leave, all of a sudden we're told that Indonesia is going to have soldiers on the ground there to police Indonesia. And it's going to go along with Pakistan and all these other, Vietnam. Vietnam is going to be there in Gaza. There's something terribly wrong with us. And the one person who needs to articulate it, and we trust that he might have behind closed doors, and we don't know how effective it'll be, was Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right.
It's Netanyahu's case to basically make the case for Israel as to why this was absolute lunacy. And if push comes to shove, for him to tell the United States, we are not going to agree having foreign forces in Gaza on our border. It's not going to happen. And if Benjamin Netanyahu wants to go down in history, it won't be because of what he wrote about himself in the book Bibi. It'll be because he found the chutzpah to be able to finally stand up and tell that president, who's a wonderful president when it comes to his intentions vis-a-vis Israel, but who's terribly naive at times, he needs to be able to tell him, no, because in 2.5 years, you're going to be golfing again, and Israel will still have to face the same murderous neighbor on its borders.
Yeah. That's really interesting because, and I agree, but, and Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett and others from the opposition in Israel, they're very clear about this issue as well, that they say under no circumstances should Qatari and Turkish troops and others be allowed into Gaza. So how does Netanyahu, how does he play along with this? How does he sign on to this board of peace?
Yeah.
What kind of sense does it make?
Well, the reason he signed on to the board of peace, Mayor, is because his explanation, and I think it's a very tepid one, but his explanation was, well, we had a choice, either not to participate and have everyone say what they say, which would be anti-Israel, or at least we'll take a seat at the table so when it comes our turn, we can say something.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand that.
All right, it's a lame excuse because it's a kangaroo court to begin with. It's already a kangaroo court. And the one thing that we have to understand, I have no idea if or when, and I believe it'll be when, the United States decide that it's going to strike against Iran. And if anybody thinks that this is a wonderful thing that happens as far as Israel's future is concerned, I would agree on the one part, but on the flip side of that coin is it has nothing to do with Gaza. Trump might strike Iran, but he's proceeding at full steam with phase 2 of the Gaza peace plan. Peace. He's
let me just interject for a moment about the tie on the connection with Iran, that maybe it's it's to divert attention. We're so busy with Gaza, and then all of a sudden it's 12 midnight and boom, there's the fireworks going on. A war is launched against Iran. Well, President Trump is not that enthused with the Shah that would like to be the leader of Iran. And I've been following various articles and information that have been coming out that he does not necessarily represent everybody in Iran necessarily. Even have Mossad Yosef, that's a strong supporter of Israel. He worked for Mossad, and he's coming out very strong against the Shah. That it's not going to work out, and the monarchy movement is something not to attach yourselves to. So it's a little bit of confusion going on about who would take charge. Would it be? I mean, is that regime change? Does it happen smooth, or is it? So go ahead, Mayor.
It doesn't
I'm sure you
have
heard
to be, it doesn't have to be regime change in the sense that it means or presupposes that the Shah or the son of the Shah is going to be the one to take over. Okay, it doesn't matter. The biggest threat right now that Israel is about to face, when I say about to face, certainly in the next 2, 3, and 5 years, isn't going to be Iran. It's going to be Turkey. It is Turkey.
Yes.
It's Turkey. Turkey is now the country, and yet Turkey finds itself in bed with the United States. Whereas Trump might find the Iranians to be intransigent, the Turks are the ones that we need to be concerned about, because what they effectively run the Syrians, and they are taking control of there's going to be an entire Sunni bloc against Israel. But I want to come back to what you said about the enthusiasm for the Shah. There were those people, and one could say, I think, with a certain measure of credibility, were idiots who said, well, if we would kill Hitler then, and whether 41 or 43, well, we don't know what's going to follow. Maybe Himmler was going to be worse. My God.
No, 100%.
What if we kill Hitler and find out who's next? And if
Mayor, 100%. You got to do away with the Ayatollah, like Israel bumped out the leaders of the IRGC and et cetera, and Nasrallah and Lebanon and all the heads of absolutely 100%.
Right.
So why the hesitancy then?
Well, for the moment, the policy needs to be, it's not the Ayatollah. He's gone. He's dead. And if someone is going to replace him because his son seems to be the heir apparent, he's dead too. He's gone.
Yeah.
Let him share some kind of apartment in some tall skyscraper in Moscow with Assad. But he's not going to work. So the lesson that needs to be learned is actually one that Hamas was taught, and then Israel took the foot off the accelerator many years ago, when 22 years ago, Israel killed the founder of Hamas. We talked about Yassin, and he was immediately replaced by Dr. Rantisi. And people said, oh, he might be worse. Well, 3.5 weeks after the former was killed, so was Rantisi. Israel killed him. What did Hamas do? Hamas said, we have appointed a replacement now, not only for Sheikh Yassin and now for Rantisi. We're appointed a new spokesperson, a new leader for Hamas, but we aren't going to identify him for fear that Israel is going to kill him. My God, what a wonderful success it is for Israel that they weren't even going to identify who he was for fear that Israel might kill him. And what happened instead? In August of 2005, Israel gives Hamas Gaza. They give them Gaza. And all of a sudden, the Arabs weren't afraid to announce who those leaders were. Khalid Mashal, Ismail Haniyeh, and so on and so forth. What we've got to do is put the fear of God into the enemies of Israel, and there's only one way to put the fear of God into them: with credibility. You've got to deliver. When you deliver, you become credible. And it's time for Israel and the United States, by the way, and for the United States to find that credibility and destroy these enemies of the Western world.
100%. Mayor, we ran out of time. Listen, thank you very much. We'll take it up again. The news, the relevancy, what's going on right now is happening so quick. So we'll be doing this again. We'll be updating all our followers and supporters and friends. So everyone, thank you very much. And please share this on whatever social media platform you use. And if you'd like, you can contact us, get involved, go on our website, israelnow.ca, send us an email. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.